Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You are watching the Paris Fintech Forum Communities video interview series. I'm Elliott Gotkine, and today I'm joined by the CEO of Stellar, Denelle Dixon. Thanks so much for joining me.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so before we get started, we're going to learn a little bit more about Stellar. So, Denelle, tell us about Stellar.
Yeah, so the Stellar Development Foundation, which is the entity that I'm the CEO of, is a non-stock nonprofit entity that's sole focus is its mission, which is creating equitable access to the global financial system. And we believe that the best way to do that is to use the Stellar Network, which is an open public blockchain that is awesome for payments, awesome for asset issuance. And it is already, we just see like so much volume on the network that is focused on payments. And we think that really the way to bring blockchain to the mainstream is to really focus on the needs that folks have in different parts of the world. And that is a lot about just getting value to them and allowing them to send value to and from their family.
So, when it comes to payments with digital assets, I suppose many people are familiar with the problems associated with paying for things with Bitcoin, for example, never mind the volatility of the price. So can you just give us a sense of exactly how it works? I assume this is using stable coins or other, less volatile assets that are more conducive to making payments?
Yeah, so what's really awesome about Stellar is that you can issue any asset on Stellar. So we actually prefer, with respect to payments, those assets that are fiat backed. Because those are stable, and so when you're sending and then you're receiving the same thing that was sent. So that is our preference, and that is what the network was actually built to allow. But there's lots of assets that can be issued on Stellar that can be gold backed, silver backed, you name it. Folks have done it, and they exist on the network. But for payments, in terms of right now, one of the largest usage that we see is for USDC, which is a USD-backed stablecoin that is really useful in lots of parts of the world for transferring that sort of value using Stellar as a payment network.
And I know you mentioned you're a non-profit, but perhaps you can give me a bit of a sense of the numbers, like the amount traded on your network, the impact you've had, and how widely used it is, for example.
Yeah, no, it's great. I actually I think that if I look at the payments numbers, which are the numbers that are just super interesting to me, because I think even just we've seen a 400% increase year on year in just the payments that are on the network, and that's 38 million payments in just one quarter. So just last quarter, which is pretty remarkable, given that I think last year the same time it was like 7.9 million payments that have been leveraged. I think some of that comes from the fact that we went through the COVID period where lots of folks were home and using digital assets more to do these kinds of transactions, and just like the more mainstream that the blockchain has become, and also like how much more active Stellar has become itself. So that is a particularly great piece of a KPI for us that I look at all the time. Another one is that we have over 7 million accounts on Stellar, and those accounts can have sub accounts underneath them because you can have custodial wallets that actually hold many accounts under one. And I think that those are just numbers that demonstrate the volume and the value that's already been delivered on Stellar. I think I'd love to be able to give you a number regarding the number of just companies that are built on the network. But one of the beauties of a public blockchain and open source software is that folks can build all over the world without actually contacting us, without us ever knowing they're doing it, which is what I love about open source projects and what's something that Stellar delivers. So we have folks building on the network globally. And it makes me really happy when I see new things pop up that I didn't even know existed.
And forgive me, being a non-profit, I assume obviously the network is viable. Obviously that there are certain costs involved in order to maintain the network, but who's kind of supporting that? Who's plugging the gap if it is making losses on let's say the investment versus the revenues received? How does that work?
Yeah, so the greatest thing about when you actually think about the Stellar network as just the same as the underpinnings of the internet. So the thing that allows us to be able to have this conversation over video. So it's just a bunch of computers all over the world that have decided to come together to be able to support this technology. And so that's just really community organized. And with an open source project, that's how a lot of this works, is that folks want to run validators. The validators are those computers that actually validate transactions. and they come together to create consensus. And then the blockchain itself gets to be able to have the awesome transactions that happen on the blockchain through that consensus mechanism and through the usage of those technologies. So the network itself actually is just created in the exact same way that the internet is, because these computers come together. Now, there are many entities that build on the network, which create the front end tools for users to be able to access the network. And those entities have their own revenue models, and hopefully themselves are very successful in terms of how they do things. But I will say that what we do, we have lots of assets at Stellar, and we have a mandate page on stellar.org, which focuses on, we have billions of lumens that we deliver into the world through grants, through investments in companies to support new technologies, right? That's right. The lumens are the native token of the network, which actually works to support and keep that encryption and protects against spam and DDoS. And so we actually bring those into the ecosystem and deliver them to those that are leveraging the ecosystem to power their businesses. So there's a lot of support that we give as a foundation, but most of these companies are successful and independent on their own.
I'm glad you mentioned lumens, which is Stellar's coin, for want of a better description. And that has lost, unless I'm mistaken, since its peak in 2018, about 90% of its value. Is that right? And a lot of other coins, some of which were believed to have been stable, have been wiped out or also seen a massive plunge in their values. Has that affected the usage of the Stellar network? Is it just a blip? What's the impact been?
Well, the great thing about Stellar is that the assets that are preferred on the network in terms of payments and how the network operates at its peak, I would say, is leveraging those stable coins. So the stable coins are stable and they're backed by the local fiat. We have over 30 entities that have issued stablecoin assets on the network that are backed by, for example, the Nigerian naira or the Mexican peso. So those are the tokens those are the preferred mechanisms for the payments and to make the payments work. Now, with every single transaction that happens on the network, there's a fraction of a lumen that is leveraged. And that's, again, to protect against spam and DDoS and to protect that encryption. So the lumens are used all the time. Whether the up and down of the lumens don't impact the volatility of the lumen price itself, doesn't impact the usage on the network. And I think that, it's important to know that you can send over 100,000 transactions for less than a penny on Stellar, because really, those fees don't go to anyone. The way the consensus mechanism works is those fees are burned after every transaction. And so I think it's a really interesting thing that the lumen price doesn't impact the network and how the network operates. Of course, it does. It would, if the lumen price got to be $10, for example, you'd really want to think about how much you use for each of those transactions. So you may have to lower the amount of a lumen that's used for each transaction to still make the cost of the payment very simple and much more streamlined.
Okay, well, we'll come back to stable coins, I think, a little bit later, because now, of course, we've heard a bit about Stellar, but now it's time to get to know Denelle a little bit better. So, Denelle, here you are as the CEO of this network with hundreds of millions of dollars being traded on it, and yet, you're from what I understand, you're from a small town, and you were the first person in your family to go to college. Did you feel that you had this kind of weight on your shoulders to kind of make sure that you made it somehow?
It's so funny. I think that making it is such an interesting thing to think about what that means for each of you. My dad was like just this awesome, he still is, this awesome human that actually always said to me, if you go to college and you step foot on that campus and you just go to one class, you've done more than anybody else in the family, and we're so proud of you. And so he did that for my whole life, like in terms of all the different pieces and steps that I would take. And so I really always wanted to go to college. When I was in third grade, I saw a made-for-TV movie where one of Charlie's Angels was actually a lawyer, and I decided I wanted to be a lawyer as a result of that, which is ultimately what I did in my first stage of my career. And I went to law school, and again, at law school, my dad was like, look, if you go and you take one class, and even if you don't finish that class, you've done more than anybody in our family and to educate yourself and to improve what you want to do with your life. So I never felt that weight. Other than like just for me personally, I really pushed myself, and I still do. I have a very strong moral compass about what I want to do with myself and with my life, and a strong work ethic. And so I think that the weight was my own to carry. It wasn't that anybody put it on me.
God bless Charlie's Angels, eh? So I think you spent just shy of a decade, I think, at Mozilla before moving to Stellar in 2019. You are the CEO, but you're not the founder. Do you have that kind of urge to one day found your own company? Is that the kind of next ambition on your bucket list?
It's so funny. I wish that I actually had that kind of creativity. I am really, really, really good at taking ideas and sort of helping to put structure around them and put strategy around them and really push them forward. I've never been one of those people who's actually been like able to like create and develop the idea on my own. And I think that, there's certainly ideas that I can come up with once I have like this like box to think in. But so no, I don't think so. Really, I loved my work at Mozilla. We spent a ton of time doing kind of what I do now, which is really focusing on that intersection of policy and technology, and really trying to not just do the work for Stellar. We actually think about policy from a standpoint of making blockchain and cryptocurrencies really useful in the world and really educating policymakers and regulators around that for everyone, not just for us, because I really believe that competition is key and it makes and forces innovation. And I love openness and transparency and interoperability. And I think that there is not going to be one winner. I think there are going to be many, many players that exist in this space. And that is what's going to make it so that from the standpoint of what we want, what we all want is to really improve the financial ecosystem that exists out there and to create more of a borderless system. And if we want that, then we all need to sort of work together to make that happen. And so I love that kind of work. And I love being able to achieve what I think are really significant milestones with respect to policy and really making that happen through technology. So it's been a ton of fun. And I think this is sort of like my thing. This is my jam. I love it.
Sounds like you're quite a collaborative person when it comes to the professional side of things, but I understand you're a bit of a runner and even a marathon runner, which is, I guess, quite a solo pursuit. How does the running, if at all, help you with running Stellar or being, this business person in this, position of power, I guess?
Yeah, so running to me has always been that space where I sort of collect my thoughts, get my strategy in play. I really feel like it allows me that alone time to be able to think about a lot of what I need to do, whether it be for that day or like really planning for the year. I really think strategy and organizational and culture and organizational optimization is a really, really important part about how to take this idea and this thing that Jed McCaleb created with respect to Stellar in particular, and to turn it into something even more massive than anyone could have ever thought it was. And so that's what running allows me to do. And I'm super competitive, and I love to like really compete against myself. And so running allows that for me too. So I run every day, and it's rain or shine, or snow or sleet, whatever you want to say, and it really brings calms me down, keeps my focus.
Okay, so we'll see how competitive you are with the quickfire round later on. But a key part of this interview, Denelle, is to get your take on the future of finance. But first, we are going to take a very quick break, after which we're going to continue our conversation with Stellar CEO Denelle Dixon. Welcome back, and don't forget, if you're not already a full member of our community, everything you need to join can be found at www.parisfintechforum.com. Okay, Denelle, let's now talk about the future of finance. All right, so nice easy one to start off with. Last year there was more fervent talk of crypto becoming the future of finance, that it was here, and now we've seen these meltdowns. We've seen various so-called purportedly stable coins, especially algorithmic ones, basically going to the wind. People can't get their money out. People were, enticed for these crazy yields that they could have got with certain people. Are you still convinced that crypto, that the digital assets are the future of finance?
Oh yeah, more than ever, I think now. I think what happens in this, and in July I just did a piece on looking at the bubble from the dot-com days, and there's a lot of comparisons that people make between then and now, and they're very different in terms of what we're ultimately, I think, seeing happened in the market to make those two crises, if you want to call them that, sort of happen, and then what results from them. But I think that this is almost and some people may hate this, but I do feel like it's a sign of maturity for the ecosystem, where you get to this place where things actually are going to shake out, that are actually going to be able to continue, and that are going to be able to be successful, and that are going to have, if things are too good to be true, or they seem too good to be true, then they probably are. And this is one of the things that we have to take away from this ecosystem as well. And so I think we're going to end up at the end of this like crypto winter, and at the end of all of this, these events that have happened, which are awful and terrible, and I know lots of folks lost money during them, but I think we're going to shake out to like really see what is blockchain really, really good for? What are these amazing innovations that have happened that can actually continue and we can derive value from them for the financial system?
How long do you think this crypto winter is going to last?
Well, I think it's one of those things where I think we're gonna. I would like to say that I think we're gonna see us come out of it in the actual winter this year. I see that we're already seeing a little bit of break from what's happening. Like the markets are coming up a bit, but mostly what I see is that there's still money that exists in the ecosystem to fund innovation, and I see more players really be interested in funding that innovation, which is always a good sign. So even if the numbers stay low with respect to the tokens, and I know that's really, really important to lots of folks who spend time here, what I want to see is a continued focus on innovation and creativity, because that's what we need to see. It's the same thing that sort of happened at the dot-com bubble where, there was so much attention put and a lot of valuations that went really high, and then money sort of dried up, right? We're not seeing the money dry up here. We're seeing that there's a little bit of holding back on it, but I do think that the way that we come out of this is actually by demonstrating the value that blockchain has to offer. I think that, our relationship with MoneyGram and the SDF and what we've created on these on and off ramps globally is one of the things that really shows that this is actually changing the financial ecosystem and changing the global financial system in real ways, where you can bring those billions of folks who don't have access to right now the financial system that we have access to, bring them into it using digital technology. So I do think that's what's going to happen, and I think it'll start to happen. You'll see more and more come out of it by the end of the year.
But for now, it's still a very small fraction of the broader financial system. So my question to you would be, when do you think the digital assets are going to be mainstream, are going to go mainstream? Is it when the US and EU, central banks start issuing central bank digital currencies or CBDCs? Is it when you can open digital asset accounts with legacy banks, or send money using stable coins with, whether it's JP Morgan or HSBC or whatever the case may be? At what point can we say, okay, this is now mainstream?
Yeah, I think that there are three things that are really important that need to happen. First, I think that we need to have, and this may seem like a simple thing, but UX designers and folks that are really focused on making it very simple for consumers. That has not historically been the focal and the attention that we've actually had in crypto. A lot of it's been on the technology. And what we really need to do is make it simple. It's the same thing that happened in the early days of the web. Once you made it really easy and comfortable for users to be able to use the web, they did. And so we need to make it simple. The second thing is we need to focus on the problems. And a lot of that has not been our focus, because there's been so much fun and innovation happening. But when you actually are solving problems for humans and for businesses, it actually makes it so that technology becomes undeniably interesting. And so I already see momentum in there, but we need to demonstrate how blockchain and crypto are solving real problems that exist for humans and businesses in the world. And then the third thing I think is we do need to see governments be more accepting and governments start talking more about it. We're already seeing that happen in Europe and in the United States. I know that the space that just happened, and in terms of these challenges that just arose in crypto, it takes us a few steps back. But we're already seeing tons of momentum where there's a focus there and there's an interest there. And so I think that actually pushes us more towards becoming more and more mainstream.
Okay, just briefly, if you can, because I want to move on to the final section, Denelle. So what's, we've heard, for example, President Biden signing an executive order calling on the government to examine the risks and benefits of cryptocurrencies, and perhaps there could be more, there's more talk about other kind of regulations there. What's the best and worst thing governments and regulators could do right now to support or torpedo, the digital asset market or this kind of digital asset revolution?
I think the worst thing that governments could do is to focus on the technology and try to regulate it differently than any of the other markets they already have. It is not about the technology. It is actually about the activity. And I think what we see sometimes is regulators who are so consumed by the technology and the differentiation there, they sort of think it needs to be in a different bucket. And that is the worst thing that regulators can do. I think the best thing regulators can do is to take a step back and learn a bit more about it and then focus on the activity and the value. And I think we're seeing a lot of that, frankly.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for the concise answer, because it's time now for our round of rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, great. So we're going to have 90 seconds and just one word answers is ideal. And I'm going to start my clock in just a moment. Okay, so Denelle, what fintech segment has the biggest potential over the next 5 years aside from yours?
DAOs.
What is the biggest pain point in your everyday financial life that you would like to see resolved?
Fees.
Are we at the beginning, middle, or end of the fintech wave?
Beginning.
Do you have a metaverse strategy?
No.
Have EU and US regulators kept pace with all the changes that we've been seeing in the financial industry?
Yes.
How would you describe NFTs? A scam, B, an interesting concept, or C, part of the future that we don't want to miss out on?
C.
Have you ever invested in crypto yourself?
Yes.
Are physical points of sales part of the future of finance?
Yes.
Out of 10, which of the following is the most likely to happen in the next 10 years? That one of the neobanks will be as profitable as a top-tier legacy bank?
6.
CBDCs become a mainstream reality in the US and EU, or EU?
And I say 7.
You'll be able to open a crypto account at a top-tier bank?
10.
SWIFT will still be the main tool for transferring money around the world?
3.
A new card or non-card based rival will emerge to challenge Visa, MasterCard and the like?
7.
And finally, that we will see a top-tier bank or insurer bought by a fintech?
Absolutely. 10.
Okay, wonderful. So we got through all of them. So you are in equal first place. I know you're competitive, but we are out of time for that round and also for our conversation. So just want to thank you again, Stellar CEO Denelle Dixon, for joining me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And for everyone watching, we will be back again next week with another big name from the world of finance and technology. We do hope you'll be able to join us again then. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to the Paris Fintech Forum YouTube channel and to follow us on Twitter at Paris Fin Forum. That's all for now. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.